My name is Dr. Aliyah Washington. I'm 45 years old. I never imagined I'd be the one lying on the pavement, bleeding out on the same ambulance bay I'd walked 1,000 times, listening to the sirens that were now, finally, for me. I never imagined I'd die, but I did. I crossed over, and what I saw was something I never expected, something that no medical textbook, no scientific journal could ever explain. I met Jesus, and he showed me something about Black people, about our pain, our power, and the war that's really happening behind the scenes of our lives. And it completely and utterly shocked me. It wasn't just a dream. It wasn't some peaceful, hazy vision. It was a revelation, as raw and real as the concrete I bled out on. I'm still trying to understand it all, but one thing I know with every fiber of my being: it needs to be shared. On October 22nd, I died at a level 1 trauma center in Chicago. It was a Saturday night shift, the 14th hour of a brutal 16-hour rotation. The air in the ER was thick with its usual tension, a cocktail of tragedy and adrenaline, and the faint, metallic scent of blood that never quite washes out. I was a trauma surgeon. I thrived in the chaos, or at least I told myself I did. I had hands that were steady, that could piece together what violence had torn apart. I was good at my job. I was one of the best. But that excellence had come at a cost I was no longer willing to admit. My life outside of the OR was in fragments. My ex-husband, a man I had once loved fiercely, was now just a co-parent I communicated with through polite, sterile text messages. Our divorce 3 years ago wasn't dramatic. It was a slow, cold drift into becoming two strangers living in the same house, the silence between us heavier than any argument. Our beautiful son, Elijah, was 16 now, and he had chosen to live with his dad. He was tall, quiet, a gifted basketball player with my eyes and his father's steady calm. He used to talk my ear off about everything: galaxies, hip-hop lyrics, the subtle differences between shades of blue in the sunset. Lately, he barely speaks to me. Our phone calls were short, clipped, an excruciating exercise in avoiding the real topics, punctuated by awkward silences and half-hearted I love yous. I buried myself in my work. It was my excuse, my refuge. I took on back-to-back shifts, the most complex trauma cases, the ones everyone else dreaded. I told myself and everyone else that I was doing it to help people, to be a strong example of a Black woman succeeding in a demanding, male-dominated field. But really, I was hiding. Maybe you know what that's like, to lose yourself in being busy, to chase the noise of sirens and pagers so you don't have to hear the deafening silence of your own lonely heart. That was me, always running, always performing, always tired. I used to believe in God. My grandma, a formidable pillar of her AME Zion Church in Alabama, had made sure of that. She was the one who taught me how to pray, how to sing the old hymns from the bottom of my belly, how to stand tall and carry myself with a dignity she said was my God-given birthright as a daughter of the King. But somewhere along the way, between the grueling hours of medical school and the endless river of trauma in the ER, I lost it. First came the intellectual doubts, then the emotional silence, then a hard, cynical pride. I had seen too much senseless death, too much pain that fervent prayers didn't seem to touch. I held the hands of too many dying people. I watched too many mothers scream a sound that rips the soul, screaming over their sons, young Black boys with holes in their chests from bullets that were never meant for them. I kept thinking, if God is real, if he is good and all-powerful, then why all this? Why always us? The question became a poison in my spirit. So I hardened. It was a survival mechanism, a necessary amputation of the soul. I stopped praying, except for the desperate, reflexive "Oh God" when a patient was crashing. I began to see faith as a fairy tale, a comforting narrative for people who couldn't face the brutal, random, unforgiving reality of the world. But the truth is, I was angry, not just at a God I claimed not to believe in, but at myself. I was tired of feeling like I wasn't enough, not a good enough surgeon to save everyone, not a good enough mother to keep my own son close, not a good enough woman to keep her marriage together. I'd show up in the trauma bay like a warrior, encased in scrubs and confidence. But I'd come home to my empty house and feel like a ghost. There was this one night, a few months before I died, that I'll never forget. A boy came in, 14 years old, caught in gang crossfire while walking home from the library with a stack of books. We worked on him for 2 hours. His mother, a woman my own age, stood outside the trauma room, clutching my arm every time I came out, her nails digging into my skin. Please, doctor, please, she begged, her eyes wide with a terror I had seen 1,000 times. He didn't make it. Afterward, I went into a supply closet, locked the door, and sat on the floor in the dark, my back against the cool metal shelves, and I cried silently into my hands. No one saw, I made sure of that. Trauma surgeons aren't supposed to cry, especially not Black women who are taught from birth that they have to be twice as strong just to be seen as equal. But behind all the titles, doctor, hero, single mom, I was just tired, empty, broken. I missed Elijah's championship game last year. A multi-victim car pileup came in right at tip-off, and I couldn't leave. He scored the winning basket. He had painted a tribute on his basketball shoes for me, with my name and a little caduceus. His dad sent me a photo. I stared at it for an hour, my heart aching with a mixture of pride and profound guilt. But I never called him to say how proud I was. The shame was too great. What kind of mother does that? That night shift, the one where I died, I remember feeling especially hollow. I looked at my reflection in the OR window. Tired eyes, lines etched around my mouth that weren't from smiling. I didn't recognize the woman staring back at me. Then the call came over the intercom. Code red, ambulance bay, multiple GSWs. I didn't hesitate, I ran. The scene was pure chaos. A young man was on a gurney, bleeding heavily. As we were rushing him inside, another car screeched up to the curb, tires smoking, and the shooting started again. Retaliation, it was brutal, indiscriminate, and fast. People screamed, nurses ducked for cover, pulling gurneys with them. I saw a young resident, fresh out of med school, frozen in the middle of the doorway, paralyzed by the sudden terror. Without thinking, I ran. It wasn't a heroic choice, it was instinct. A mother's instinct, a doctor's instinct. I pushed him hard, shoving him inside, behind the heavy steel of the doorframe. Then the sound, a gunshot. A white-hot searing pain in my side, another in my chest. I collapsed, my head hitting the concrete with a sickening thud. Everything slowed down. I remember blinking, trying to stay awake. My colleague's face hovered above mine. She was crying, her mouth forming my name, but I couldn't hear her. It was like the world had turned to water, muffled, heavy, slow. Then silence, the kind of silence that feels alive. Not scary, just still, and in that stillness, something inside me broke open. Not my body, my soul. The hard, protective shell I'd built over years, the pride, the numbness, the anger, it all cracked. I thought of Elijah, his face when he was a little boy, full of light. I wanted to tell him I was sorry, that I should have come to his game, that I missed him every single day. I wanted to tell him he was the best thing I'd ever been a part of. I thought of my grandma, her voice humming, "Precious Lord, take my hand," while she braided my hair on her porch. I wanted to believe again, but it felt too late. That's when it started, the light. It wasn't blinding, it was soft, gentle, like a memory I'd forgotten but had always missed. And as my eyes began to close for the last time, I heard a voice. Not loud, not booming, but real, intimate, and closer than my own breath. Come. One word, but it felt like home. That was the moment I let go, and what came next I can't explain in human words. But I'll try because it changed everything. Everything went quiet, not hospital quiet, which is never truly quiet. This was a silence that was full, a silence that held everything. The pain in my chest was gone. I didn't feel the cold concrete anymore. Just a floating, peaceful weightlessness, like I'd slipped out of my own skin. I blinked, or what felt like blinking, and suddenly I was above the scene, looking down at myself. My colleagues were rushing, a nurse doing compressions, another calling out vitals. And there I was, just watching. It should have been terrifying, but it wasn't. The pain, the pressure, the bone-deep exhaustion that had followed me like a shadow for years, all of it was gone. Instead, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. Peace. Not the kind that comes from a moment of quiet, but a deep, rich, absolute peace that felt like being wrapped in warm light. Something shifted. The ceiling of the ambulance bay dissolved like smoke. And beyond it, a sky that shimmered like gold mixed with water, with colors that don't exist here. I was rising. At first, it was slow, gentle. Then suddenly I was pulled not by force, but by love, like being called home. The world I knew faded behind me, and ahead a light. But not just a light, a presence. It was like walking into the most sacred space you can imagine, only to realize the space isn't a place. It's a person. And that person sees everything, every wound, every secret, every failure, and still welcomes you. I don't know when I stopped floating and started being there. But suddenly I was standing on something like ground, but softer than clouds, solid and real, but somehow alive. And then he was there, Jesus. Not like the paintings, not like the stories. He didn't need to say a word, my soul knew. Knew it was him, knew he had always known me. Knew he had seen every single moment of my life. Even the ones I tried to hide from myself. I fell to my knees, not because I had to, but because everything in me broke. All the walls I'd built, the pride, the cynicism, the tired detachment, they couldn't stand in his presence. I started sobbing, deep, ugly, soul-wrenching sobs from the core of me. Years of unspoken pain pouring out like floodwaters. I kept whispering, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. And he knelt, yes, he knelt, the King of Heaven, the Savior, the one who holds the galaxies in his hands. He knelt down beside me on that ground of light. He didn't scold me, he didn't shake his head, he just pulled me into his arms. And I wept like a child. In his arms, I felt everything I'd spent my life chasing: love, safety, purpose, belonging. And for the first time, I wasn't trying to be strong anymore. I was just held, and it was enough, more than enough. I don't know how long I stayed like that. Time didn't exist there. Then he pulled back, and I looked into his eyes. They weren't just kind, they were truth. I saw a holy fire in them, not the fire that burns to destroy, but the kind that burns away lies. In those eyes, I saw that he knew everything. He saw me miss Elijah's game. He saw the way I judged people to avoid my own pain. He saw how I wore my job like armor so I wouldn't have to feel like a failure at home. And still, he loved me. You were never alone, Aliyah. His voice wasn't loud, but it shook the air around us. It felt like thunder wrapped in velvet. He stood and reached out his hand. Come, he said again. I took it, and when I did, it was like my spirit exploded with light. We began walking, and the world around us opened. I saw faces, black faces, thousands of them, young and old, men and women. Some were smiling, some were weeping. I didn't understand yet, but I could feel it. Jesus was leading me into a truth too big for this world, something about who we are, who we've always been. We stopped. We were standing on the edge of what looked like a great open space. And in that space, I saw them again. The faces, black faces, thousands of them, from chains and cotton fields to protest lines in college classrooms, from barber shops and beauty salons to prisons and hospitals. From church pews to street corners. What is this? I asked. Jesus was quiet for a moment. Then he said, This is the war you couldn't see. He lifted his hand, the space shifted, and suddenly I saw shadows. Not people, not creatures, but forces, ancient and intelligent, moving through generations like smoke, twisting, whispering. I saw the whispers that said, You are not enough, you are broken, you do not belong. I saw the lies planted like seeds in schools, in homes, in hearts. I saw pride built as armor over pain. I saw anger growing from rejection. I saw brilliance dimmed by hopelessness. And I saw deep, hidden, generational grief, the kind you carry in your bones when the world keeps telling you to be strong and silent. My knees buckled. Lord, what is this? The enemy has tried to erase my image from them, Jesus said, his voice filled with a holy anger, to bury their glory under generations of pain. I looked up at him, stunned. Their glory. He nodded, yes, the glory I placed in them. The strength, the creativity, the tenderness, the rhythm, the fire. It is not accidental. It is part of my design. It is a reflection of me. Tears filled my eyes. All my life, I'd felt that tension. The quiet ache of wanting to be seen fully, not just for what I did, but for who I was. And now I knew I wasn't imagining it. There is a war over identity, he said, and many of my children are walking blind in it. Jesus placed his hand over my chest. You carry some of that pain too, Aliyah. You felt like you had to carry your people's pain on your own. Yes, I whispered. Yes, I did. You wore strength like a mask, he said, but I saw the little girl inside, the one who just wanted to be held. And in that moment, I saw myself at 8 years old, after my father left, trying to be strong for my mother, pretending I didn't care. Jesus leaned closer. You were never meant to carry it alone. I broke again, sobbing into his shoulder. When I could finally breathe again, he spoke softly. There is a call on your life, Aliyah, a purpose that did not die with your body. I looked at him, startled. You want me to go back? He smiled, eyes full of kindness. Yes, they need to hear this. There are children walking in pain who need to know who they are. They need someone to carry this message, to show them my love, to remind them they are not forgotten. I thought of Elijah, of his sad, distant eyes. Him too, I asked. Yes, he said, especially him. You cannot bring a message of restored identity to my people until you have restored it first in your own home. The healing must be real in you before it can flow through you. The words settled in me, a mix of fear and a strange, powerful hope. But I'm not a preacher, I said. I'm not holy. He smiled again. You are a mother, a healer, a witness. That is enough. I looked out over the faces again, and suddenly I wanted to go. Not to escape death, but to carry life, to tell the truth. Jesus stepped back, and everything around us started to shift. The light dimmed slightly. The air began to hum. It's time, he said. I took a step back, my heart aching. Will I see you again? I asked. His voice was warm and steady. I am always with you. And just before the world pulled away, before I left the only place I'd ever felt fully known, he said one more thing. Tell them their story isn't over. I woke up to pain, blinding, sharp, body-heavy pain. It hit me like a wave crashing on dry ground. I gasped. My chest jerked, machines beeped, voices shouted. Then darkness again. When I came to the second time, it was slower. I was in a hospital bed. Tubes in my arms, oxygen in my nose, my chest bandaged tight. I blinked at the white ceiling, trying to understand, and then it hit me. I was back, not in heaven, not in that world of light and peace, but here, on earth. The weight of the world returned with my breaths, and a grief came with it. Not for my life, but for leaving him, for leaving Jesus. Tears slid down my face as I lay there, too weak to speak. I missed his eyes, his voice, his arms, but underneath the ache was something stronger. A purpose. Go back, tell them their story isn't over. My colleagues called it a miracle. They said I was gone for several minutes, flatlined, no heartbeat. But something made me come back. I wanted to tell them someone brought me back. Elijah came to visit me a week after I woke up. I was sitting in a wheelchair by the window when he walked in. Long braids, earbuds in, a basketball under his arm. He looked unsure, almost scared. Hey, he said, soft and cautious. I looked at him, really looked at him, and my heart both broke and healed at the same time. He was taller now, his face more grown, but those eyes were still his, still my baby boy. Hey, I said, my voice raspy, come here. He stepped closer, slow, like maybe I'd push him away, but I didn't. I reached out with my good arm and pulled him into a hug. He froze for a second, then melted into my chest. We both cried, no words, just years of missed birthdays and quiet hurt pouring out between us. When he pulled back, I said, I'm sorry. For what? For not showing up, for not being there when you needed me, for acting like my job mattered more than you. He wiped his eyes. It's okay. No, I said, holding his hand. It's not, but I'm going to make it right if you'll let me. He nodded. I'd like that. Since coming back, I've made changes, big ones, small ones. The first was I quit working overtime. That sounds simple, but for me, it was huge. I had built my life around achievement, around being needed, around doing. But now I live to be. I cook with Elijah on Tuesdays, even if it's just mac and cheese. We light a candle, sit down at the table, and we talk. I listen now. Not just nod along, but really listen. I started calling my mama every Sunday again. I showed up to my cousin's poetry slam. First time I've seen him smile at me in years. I visit the older patients in my hospital who don't get many visitors. I hold their hands, I pray with them when they ask and sometimes when they don't. Before, I avoided the Black community outside my ER. I felt like I didn't belong, like I wasn't Black enough or just didn't have the time. Now I see differently. I see the beauty in the barber shop laughter, in the teenage boys with big dreams and bigger walls. I see God's fingerprint in the single moms, the grandmothers raising grandbabies, the tired uncles doing their best. I see them because Jesus showed me what we carry. He showed me the war over our identity. The way the world tries to tell us we're only valuable if we're tough or rich or famous or invisible. But we are more, we are loved, we are chosen. We are designed with a glory that can't be stolen by history or statistics. People ask me sometimes, did you really die? I smile, yes, I died. But you came back, yes, but not the same. I still get angry sometimes, still feel the pull of old habits, still get tempted to disappear into work. But now I live with eternity in mind. I wake up and ask, who needs love today? Who needs to be seen? Because the truth is, everyone's carrying something. Some are drowning in silence, others are shouting through anger. But underneath it all, people are just longing to be known, to be safe, to be loved, just like I was. And Jesus, he sees every one of them. Every doubt, every scar, every hidden tear. And he's not looking for perfect people, he's looking for willing hearts. He's looking for people who have been broken and are ready to be made whole. Maybe you're hearing this and you feel like you've drifted. Maybe you're tired, angry, numb. Maybe you've been told you're too far gone, too complicated, too damaged. I'm here to tell you that is a lie. Jesus sees you, he has been walking beside you this whole time. And he's not angry with you, he's not disappointed. He is waiting with arms wide open. I died, I met him, and he showed me something I will never forget. He showed me that we, especially Black people, carry a light the enemy has tried to dim for generations. But that light, it came from him, and it's not going out. Not if I have anything to say about it. Because now I'm living proof that love is real, that purpose can rise from pain, and that even the most hardened hearts can come back to life. Their story isn't over, and neither is mine.